Hello basketball fans, and welcome to our channel's first basketball-oriented video, and we're going to revisit one of the most famous draft classes in the history of the game, and one that changed it forever. Of course, I'm referring to the 1984 NBA Draft. The game itself was hitting heights it had never seen before. The NBA Championship saw this as the pattern of the decade so far. Lakers, Celtics, Lakers, Sixers, Celtics. And as a matter of fact, the first NBA Finals meeting between the Lakers and Celtics in this era had just taken place, with the Celtics winning it. The NBA was rolling in the dough with record TV ratings for that final series, and, well, it was a high competitive and exciting 7-game affair, the first of 3 in the decade between these two clubs. A mere 1 week after the finals ended at the Felt Forum in New York as part of the world-famous Madison Square Garden hosted the 1984 NBA Draft, airing on the USA Network. In the 1980s draft in major sports went from being just a yearly process that was simply being done behind closed doors, and, well, later it turned into a televised event as the 1980s commenced. The NFL started televising drafts in ESPN in 1980. The NBA's draft, about a month and a half later, debuted on the USA Network. The drafts got so-so numbers in terms of TV ratings. However, the 1983 NFL Draft, and the story and hype behind it, changed the way the public looked at the process. Even just 10 days before this draft, the NHL got in on the act, televising their draft for the first time on CBC. That was the year a young kid named Mario Lemieux was taking first overall. But here we are, June 19th, 1984, the Big Apple. 23 NBA teams, 24 picks in the first round. However, the 76ers get 3 picks. The Blazers, Clippers, and Mavericks each get 2, while the Knicks, Warriors, Nuggets, and Sonics all have to wait until the next round. Around this time, the goal was to build the team around a star center, especially in the upper tier. The struggling teams needed to begin their process of building a contender. So let's not waste any more time. Here we go, the number 1 pick. And it's the Houston Rockets, who just back in 1981 made it all the way to the NBA Finals. However, the team became a heaping mess after the 1981-82 season, when they would lose superstar center Moses Malone to the 76ers. After an abysmal 14-68 season in 1982-83, they hired Bill Fitch, who led the Celtics over the Rockets in the 81 NBA Championship. GM Ray Patterson, who had been running the team for about 12 years, had many fans calling for his head. But either way, he made a smart move in 1983 by drafting center/power forward Ralph Sampson out of Virginia first overall, and he won the NBA's Rookie of the Year. Despite this, the Rockets still finished 29-53. That's one of the worst records in the league, of course. But they won the coin toss. This was years before the lottery, and now they get another first overall pick. Ralph Sampson has a lot of power up front, but they need another center that they can take their defensive game to a whole new level as well, and they literally have one in their backyard, as the Houston Rockets select center out of the University of Houston Cougars, born in Nigeria, Hakeem Olajuwon. And back then it was Akeem, but bear with me. He did not even become aware of the game of basketball until he was well into his teens. Never played even a single game until he was around 16 years old. He came to America at the University of Houston, and after starting out as a prominent sixth man in 1981-82, the offseason he engaged in workouts with Rocket star and future Hall of Famer, the before-mentioned Moses Malone, to help improve the dynamics of his game and hopefully get him more playing time. Well, it worked. Olajuwon became a top center on the team, was named the Final Four's most outstanding player, and the team made it to the national championship. And in 1984, Hakeem led the NCAA in total rebounds and led his team to another national championship appearance and was a consensus All-American. He had everything the Rockets wanted and needed. He was a guy you can build your team around, and he and Sampson could be working together making pure magic. So how did this turn out for the Rockets? Well, let's see. In his first year, he and Sampson were on fire. The team improved to 48-34. He was runner-up for Rookie of the Year. And then the year after that, they appeared in the NBA Finals in a losing cause to the Celtics in 6 games. But it is best known, however, for their shocking upset of the Lakers that year in the Western Conference Finals. And, well, after that, there were some great times. And there were also some tumultuous times in rocky relationships with coaches and management. And the team was being deemed, quote, Choke City. Well, they became Champ City later on. Olajuwon led the team to 2 back-to-back NBA championships in 93-94 and 1994-95 season and was MVP for both finals. He was also league MVP in 1993-94, two-time Defensive Player of the Year back-to-back in 93 and 94, a 12-time All-Star from 1985 to 1997, only missing 1991, a six-time First-Team All-Star, three-time Second-Team All-Star, and three-time Third-Team All-Star, five-time All-Defensive Team, four-time Defensive Second Team, led the leagues in block twice, and led the league in rebounds three times, won an Olympic gold in 1996 as part of one of the contrived dream teams, and played a total of 18 NBA seasons, all but one spent with Houston. He played his final as a member of the Toronto Raptors. His number 34 was retired by the Houston Rockets on November 9, 2002. He was named to the NBA's 50th anniversary all-time team while still active in 1996, and in 2021 was named to the 75th anniversary all-time team and was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2008 in his first year of eligibility. So yes, I'd say Houston lucked out, they lucked out pretty good here. Well, Olajuwon was on the board, and that was pretty much expected to be the case, but now the analysts were thinking, where does a man who is deemed a generational talent go in this draft? One of the most dominant scorers in the NCAA at this point was Michael Jordan. He was already being looked at as a one-of-a-kind performer and player, and now the Portland Trailblazers on the board, which route are they going to take? The Trailblazers, unlike Houston, were a very good team. They have this high pick due to a 1981 trade with the Indiana Pacers. The Blazers finished 48-34, but were upset in the opening round by the Phoenix Suns in the playoffs. Jack Ramsey is about to enter his ninth season as coach. In his first year, he guided them to an NBA championship on the back of superstar Bill Walton. Since then, the Blazers have made the playoffs all but one season and have had a winning record almost every year, but many playoff disappointments have followed. Stu Inman has been the team's GM since 1981, but has been a major part of the team behind the scenes since their inception in 1970. Their biggest star at this point was Jim Paxson, a two-time All-Star and second-team All-Star in the 1983-84 season, a tremendous shooting guard / small forward, but also there's someone they were trying to build their team around in that certain position. That being said, however, at this point you needed a center, a fresh young center to build the team around, as Michael Thompson was approaching his 30s, and the best one available, we'd say, were Otis Thorpe, Melvin Turpin, Sam Perkins, Tim McCormick, and Sam Bowie, to name the higher ranked in those positions. All of them had tremendous upsides, but what about Jordan? Despite Jordan being deemed as a phenom, and even back then being seen as having a great career ahead, he was seen by many as a spoke in the wheel for a team that would need to build around a center, and in 1984 that made perfect sense, and the Blazers had the sixth best offensive input in the league. And with the way the drafting process works, Jordan's best fit would to be with a team whose offensive input needs a big shot in the arm. Compare this to the Rockets, who, despite how bad they were still 10th in points in the NBA that year. So a center for them made sense as well, hence why they took Olajuwon. So with the second overall pick, the Blazers select Sam Bowie from the University of Kentucky Wildcats. Now, I understand the Blazers needed a young prospect at center to hopefully usher in a new era, and he was indeed regarded as one of the best high school players in the nation back in 1979. Went on to play for the Kentucky Wildcats, but after a pretty good freshman campaign, he exploded with a great season following, and then he was a consensus second-team All-American, but injuries involving his leg and foot literally cost him 2 seasons of basketball. He had a really good 1984, where the Associated Press second-team All-American voting put him in that spot, where he had 10.5 points per game, 9.2 rebounds per game, 1.9 blocks per game, which was tremendous. So he did have an upside to him, but even the analysts knew that this could be a huge gamble for Portland, and it was clear to many that Bowie, well, he could be a liability. Bowie had a really good rookie season, playing all but 6 games and averaging 10 points, and made the NBA's all-rookie team. But that was about as good as it would get for him. He would only play 63 games over the course of the next 4 seasons, which included missing an entire 87-88 season with many injuries. Sadly, he left the Blazers just before they made it to 2 NBA Finals appearances in 3 seasons. He did, however, become quite a productive player for the New Jersey Nets in the 4 seasons he spent there in the early 90s, and finished his career playing 92 games over the course of 2 seasons for the Lakers before retiring in 1995. Let's just say this pick didn't hurt Portland as much as it could have. And yes, they probably should have selected Jordan, but when you have up-and-coming talent such as a guy like Clyde Drexler already on your team, the thought process for a center is again logical. So Olajuwon and Bowie, 2 centers selected early. It wasn't a huge surprise either, to come to think of it. And yeah, with the benefit of hindsight, we can say the Blazers done messed up. But Clyde Drexler, be it as good as Jordan or not, is a Hall of Famer who himself has won multiple accolades, obtained a championship ring later on when he was with Houston, and was named both to the 50th and 75th anniversary teams of the NBA. So now we go with the Chicago Bulls, and even those of you who never watched an NBA game in your life can likely see where this is going, but bear with me. The Bulls were abysmal, and after false hope in the early to mid-1970s, in the last 10 seasons, they've only made the playoffs twice, the last time being 1981. In a city that actually has 5 professional sports teams in the Big Four, they were definitely at the bottom of the totem pole. The White Sox were coming off winning the American League West. The Cubs were on the verge of becoming National League East champions. The Bears had the most savage defense in the NFL, and were a year away from winning a Super Bowl, while hockey Chicago Blackhawks may have been hit or miss during this era. They had Chicago Stadium shaking every single night they played. Finding Bulls fans in Chicago was as rare as Yahoo Serious getting an Oscar nomination. On top of that, they just lost their best player, Reggie Theus, in a mid-season trade. GM Rod Thorne had the higher-ups' patience wearing very thin, and after 1 year as coach, Kevin Lowry still had people skeptical if he was the right man for the job. They had a talented small forward, however, in Orlando Woolridge, and David Corzine had a good year, thinking he could be the team's star center, so the Bulls didn't think they really needed one, as their defense also gave up the 10th least amount of points in the league. Not bad, but their offensive input was terrible, ranked 20th. So they need points. Well, there you go. So this is a no-brainer. The third selection from the University of North Carolina Tar Heels, shooting guard Michael Jordan. Another youngster who created buzz in high school and made an immediate impact in his freshman year as a member of the University of North Carolina Tar Heels, winning a national championship in 1982. The same year, he was the Atlantic Coast Conference Rookie of the Year. Also, while going into this draft, he was a National Collegiate Player of the Year in 1984, a two-time consensus All-American in 83 and 84, was a Conference's Player of the Year and Athlete of the Year, two-time first-team All-Conference in those same seasons, as well as two-time USA Basketball Male Athlete of the Year. Throw in a gold medal for the 1983 Pan Am Games while we're at it. Athleticism, dominance, the will to win, and just plain flashy at times. The kid had the complete package, but there was skepticism about his defensive game. Be that as it may, however, he was given the term generational talent, which you only hear so often in sports. And you may look at his stats here in 1983 and 84 and think they're quite tame. And you'd be right. However, that's the system that head coach Dean Smith used in North Carolina as the element of teamwork, which often proved to be successful. Now, that would even see Jordan getting his court time reduced in many games. His talent was still recognized, and he could lift this lifeless Bulls team, who were definitely Bull something, off the ground. Well, oddly enough, Jordan wasn't at the draft that year. He was prepping for the 1984 Summer Olympics, and indeed would go on to win a gold medal. He was the NBA's Rookie of the Year in 1984-85 and filling seats in Chicago Stadium, helping make the Bulls relevant in the town. And a year later, after missing 64 games due to a foot injury, the skeptics started harping on the Bulls and Jordan until he scored 63 points in a playoff game against eventual champion Boston. And, oh God, do I really need to say what followed? Well, I don't have to, but I'm going to enjoy it anyway. 6-time NBA champion, 2 three-peats to accomplish those championships. MVP of all 6 of those wins. 5-time NBA MVP. By the way, the award is now named after him. 14-time NBA All-Star from 1985 to 1993, 9 times, and then after his brief hiatus from the game, 3 more times from 96 to 98, and then when he came into retirement to play for the Wizards in 01-02 and 02-03. 3-time All-Star Game MVP, 2-time Gatorade Slam Dunk Champion on All-Star Weekend. Wait, there's more. 10-time First Team All-Star, 7 times from 1987 to 93, and again after his hiatus, 3 times from 96 to 98. The only time again he wasn't during his 15 seasons were his injury-plagued season in 1986 and his 2-year hiatus that he wasn't an all-star, which included his comeback in late 95, and, his 2 years with the Wizards, and, his rookie year as well. And, he was a second-team all-star in his rookie year, so there you go. 10-time scoring champion. Remember also how they were worried about his defensive play? Well, he was Defensive Player of the Year in 1987-88, and 9-time all-defensive first team. He led the NBA in steals 3 times, awards and accolades outside the NBA. Let's see. 3-time Associated Press Male Athlete of the Year, the 1991 Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year. Oh, yes, and 2 Olympic gold medals, the one from 84 and The Dream Team in 1992. Not to mention the star power. Oh my goodness. He took the Chicago Bulls from obscurity and irrelevance in their own city to a household name across the world. He was a mainstream star. Endorsements: Ballpark Hot Dogs, Gatorade, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Rayovac Batteries, Wilson Sports, Chevrolet, Wheaties, Upper Deck, MCI, Hanes, and of course, Nike. In 2022, the Air Jordan shoe line, which of course is named after our hero here, hit revenue of $5 billion. He starred in a box office movie hit comedy, Space Jam, along with Bugs Bunny of all people. The movie has become ingrained in pop culture. And to top it all off, the number 23 retired by the Bulls and made both the 50th and 75th anniversary all-time teams. And yes, first ballot Hall of Famer. Yeah, he's pretty much the greatest player of all time. He is the greatest player of all time. And the recently released Last Dance documentary series proved that beyond a shadow of a doubt. All you brawny bootlickers can suck it and spend as much time trying to convince yourselves online as you want. It's a fact. Deal with it. Well, the top three already involve Hall of Famers, so needless to say, this draft class is quite something to behold already. And let's see who else is around the corner, as next up we have the Dallas Mavericks with the 4th pick via a 1980 trade with the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Dallas Mavericks are a young rising club who just completed their 4th season of existence, making the playoffs for the first time in 1983-84. General Manager Nick Sonju and head coach Dick Motta have been smartly building a contending club. Their team is currently led by Mark Aguirre, a highly skilled small forward who is second in the NBA in points per game and led the league in field goals and 2-point field goals. Also, they have a growing shooting guard in Rolando Blackman. Well, they could use more size and power up front and a little more depth on defense, which was somewhat inconsistent all season. The Mavs are a younger team, they're still growing up, but Motta's guidance has helped them emerge faster than most people had anticipated. So, who do you look at for what they need? They have two great choices in front of them. Sam Perkins, who along with previous pick Michael Jordan was a huge star in North Carolina and had great defensive upside to him, a great shot blocker, superb rebounder, and provides effectiveness and size up front with a great offensive upside. But when you think of size, you think Charles Barkley, who, despite being a tremendous power forward, the most dominant rebounder on the collegiate level and top-tier prospect, was seen as out of shape and having a terrible attitude, and was cut by Bobby Knight while vying for a spot with the U.S. Olympic team, and his teamwork ethic was actually questioned a lot by many leading up to the draft. Well, when decision time came, the Mavs made their pick, and they go with Sam Perkins out of the University of North Carolina Tar Heels. Now, needless to say, Jordan and Perkins were the most lethal duo on the court in the NCAA in this era. He broke out as a threat in his rookie season in 1980-81, winning the Atlantic Coast Conference Rookie of the Year and winning ACC Tournament MVP. Also, that next year, he broke out even bigger in time for the team to win the NCAA Championship. Much like Jordan, two-time first-team consensus All-American in 83-84, three-time Atlantic Coast Conference Team All-Star, shared the USA Basketball Male Athlete of the Year with Michael Jordan. And with Jordan, won a gold medal in the 1983 Pan Am Games and was now on his way to the U.S. Olympic team with him. Yes, it's no wonder he was taken right after his teammate, and the success of the North Carolina program was ever present. It looked like he would be a star on a high level. Perkins had a really good rookie season before the season started, actually, as a part of that gold medal team in the 1984 Summer Olympics. Then in his rookie year, he was named the All-Rookie team, but he didn't pan out to be the star he was touted to be, but would still go on to play 17 seasons in the NBA, play close to 1,300 games. He was durable, healthy, and had a great work ethic. It's just that his dominance and superstar prowess in college didn't translate to the NBA. He played 6 seasons in Dallas and was key in their back-to-back 50-win seasons in 86-87 and 87-88, the latter of which they made it to the 7th game of the conference finals before losing to eventual champion Lakers. Speaking of the Lakers, he joined them in 1990-91, spending 3 seasons there, and in the first season he played against former Tar Heel teammate Michael Jordan in the NBA Finals in a losing cause. Midway through the 1992-93 season, he began a productive 6-season stint with the Seattle Supersonics in a key role, as he was a key player in their run to the 96 NBA Finals, but again, his old buddy Mike put the kibosh on that. He became a key bench player for the Indiana Pacers in his final 3 seasons, and helped them make a run to the NBA Finals, only for 2 guys named Kobe and Shaq putting an end to their hopes and dreams. Perkins had a very good career, all things considered, and was still effective wherever he played, and despite not obtaining a championship, he did have a good playoff presence. Even though these 4 picks, some panned out better than others, obviously, all 4 made the All-Rookie team in 84-85. 2 became icons and legends. One sadly couldn't overcome his injuries, and the other still had a really good career, even if it wasn't the type of career that he was touted to have. So now we have Eastern Conference powerhouse up at number 5, the Philadelphia 76ers, who won this pick from a trade with the Clippers all the way back in 1978. The Sixers were still among the best teams in the league and were just 1 year removed from winning the NBA championship in 82-83, but then suffered a stunning playoff upset at the hands of the New Jersey Nets in the first round this past season. General manager Pat Williams and coach Billy Cunningham, back in the 70s, took one of the worst teams in basketball and made them champions. Pat made huge deals and great picks. Cunningham put it all together. But a first-round playoff exit to a much lesser team means they need something else to keep them going as a contender moving forward. They still have the elements that made them winners, such as Moses Malone, the star center who put them over the top, and a future Hall of Famer, Dr. J. Need I say more? They also had Mo Cheeks, one of the best defensive players in the game, and had 2 of what would be 4 first-team defensive all-selections. All 3 of these guys feature Hall of Famers. Plus, you had Andrew Toney, a 2-time All-Star shooting guard. So you may ask, what could this team possibly need? Well, a lot of players are starting to get a little older, so time to develop some young blood for the future. They were deep at all positions except for, power forward. Mike Iavaroni was, their starting power forward at the time, but the team was waiting for him to develop to be a bigger star. They weren't sure that was going to happen. Plus, he didn't have a great deal of depth, so for the Sixers, this pick actually became pretty simple in the end. With the number 5 pick in the draft, the Sixers take from the Auburn University Tigers, Charles Barkley. Indeed, the dominant rebounder who can go from coast to coast was called the Round Mound of Rebound and the Crisco Kid, among other backhanded nicknames. His insane ability to catch rebounds on missed shots on either side of the court, plus the way he drives to the basket, made him a threat on any side of that court. A third-team All-American, named by the National Association of Basketball Coaches, Southeastern Conference Player of the Year in 1984, first-team All-SEC in 84, second-team All-SEC in 82 and 83, and SEC Tournament MVP in 1984. But again, some saw Barkley as a liability. His weight, of course, was being made an issue, and also many felt that he just wasn't a team player. The Sixers saw the upside, however. And, it kind of paid off. He had a great rookie campaign where he started the season as a secondary power forward on the club, but by the end of the year, he was the number 1 starter on the team and became a gigantic fan favorite. No, that's not a backhanded insult. And during his 8 seasons in Philadelphia, he became an icon in the city, as many actually gravitated to the fact that he didn't mince words, that he'd say what was on his mind. But also he became a star on the court and was always among the league leaders in rebounds, leading the league once in 87 and 88, and yearly among points per game leaders. He was always in the upper tier. He spent 8 seasons in Philly, where he had 6 All-Star selections, being named MVP of the All-Star game in 1991, as a matter of fact. Also during his memorable tenure in the city, first-team All-Star 4 years in a row from 1988 to 1991, and was a 3-time second-team All-Star, as the only time during his days as a Sixers player he wasn't named to an All-Star team was in his rookie year. The problem was the Sixers, just as good as they were, couldn't get past a certain point, and by Barkley's 4th season, the team had missed the playoffs. And many thought his demeanor actually cost him an MVP award or two, as he always seemed to be in the thick of voting, even coming in second to Magic Johnson in 1990, which at that point the Sixers were back to be a 50-win club. But still couldn't make anything happen in the playoffs. The team crumbled to a heap again, missing the playoffs in 1992. This cannot all fall on Barkley despite him being scapegoated. His fearlessness, where he take on the likes of resident Detroit knuckle-dragger Bill Laimbeer, and his intensity led him to, let's just say, spitting on a fan in 1991, an incident that he said is the only thing he really truly regrets about his career. Otherwise, Sir Charles made no apologies for who he is. Despite his love affair with the fans of Philly and being one of the most popular players in the NBA, he was fed up with the team failing to build more around him, and he demanded a trade, and he got it, to the Phoenix Suns, a prominent 50-win team, as deemed one of the biggest playoff chokers in the NBA. Barkley's arrival in Phoenix prompted a surge of Suns jersey sales, season tickets increasing significantly, and they became a household mainstream name in the NBA. In his first year there, Barkley shocked the world by beating Michael Jordan for league MVP in the 92-93 season. He obtained his 5th first All-Star team selection and led the Suns all the way to the NBA Finals, but Jordan would have the last laugh. He would also tell the world boldly, through a Nike campaign no less, that he was nobody's role model. The ad stirred up a lot of controversy, but also got a fair bit of praise. Barkley would play a total of just 4 seasons in Phoenix, but they were 4 very memorable seasons. The next 2, the team was still a top contender, but lost to Hakeem and the Rockets both times. Barkley garnered 2 second-team All-Star selections, giving him 5 in that regard as well. The Suns crumbled, however, in Barkley's final season with the team in 95-96, barely finishing with a 500 record in an early playoff exit, and was a 3rd-team All-Star this time. However, he can bring his All-Star team selections to 11. He would also appear in the film Space Jam alongside Michael Jordan, and actually the one time he actually came off as sympathetic. I found that to be a very in-joke of the movie. But he was traded to Houston, where the Rockets hoped that they could get back up to the top by building a super team, one of the earliest super teams being built that way, which paving the way for the stuff we see now. They hoped to dethrone Jordan and the Bulls as the marketing campaign of Hakeem, Barkley, and Clyde the Glide Drexler. Well, let's just say the teaming up was a big, immense hype among the media in Houston and throughout the NBA, including selling many t-shirts with the 3 on them. In his first season there, however, it was marred with injury, but he played in his 11th All-Star game. They made it all the way to the conference finals, but lost to the Utah Jazz. The experiment proved to be a failure as a whole. Barkley would miss 145 games over 4 seasons in Houston, retiring from basketball after 16 seasons in the year 2000. He sadly never won an NBA championship, but does have 2 gold medals. He was deemed the best player of the Dream Team of 1992, and Dream Team 2 1996, he obtained another. And hey, despite how contrived the whole notion was, he at least gives him 2 major sports championships. His number was retired by the Sixers. He's now part of the Suns' Ring of Honor, and was named to both the 50th and 75th anniversary all-time teams, was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. And hey, he's still stirring the pot as a longtime analyst for TNT on television for over 20 years now. Still as entertaining and controversial as ever, and still not afraid to say what's on his mind. Heh, he's still no role model. But a lot of us still love him. Well, these first 5 picks filled all the slots of the NBA's all-rookie team in 1984-85, so even though a couple of them may not have panned out like some hoped, clearly all these teams had the right idea. But we have 3 Hall of Famers out of 5, one who still had an excellent career, and another one who just didn't pan out. So now that brings us to number 6, and it goes to the Washington Bullets, who at this point couldn't even shoot a blank properly. The Bullets, however, did slip into the playoffs, and Bob Shue, the team's head coach, was considered a great basketball mind, and despite the team's modest 35-47 record, they inched into the playoffs only to be trounced by the Celtics. Bob Ferry had been the team's GM since 1973 and had been with the team in some capacity or another since 1964, back when he was a player. And he was key in their rise in the 1970s, which did result in an NBA championship, but the team was having little to no success in the 1980s. They had an all-star in Jeff Rulin and many character players who were loved by fans in the nation's capital, such as Rick Mahorn and Greg Ballard, as well as Jeff Malone, their shooting guard, who was named the all-rookie team in the 83-84 season, so the promise was there. The Bullets actually had a really good defense, which was their upside. So what they needed is an efficient shooter, as their field goal percentage was 17th in the league, and they need points. They are ranked 21 in offensive input. Ugh. Now, there was no doubt Malone could evolve into a great scorer, but they needed points in a huge way. Otis Thorpe could no doubt put up some numbers and had a very good field goal range in college, while Alvin Robertson of Arizona can definitely make their defense even more dangerous, but Malone was already their shooting guard. Seems like Thorpe would have fit in well, but it was a bit of a shock when the Bullets selected Melvin Turpin, a center out of the University of Kentucky Wildcats, and Turpin was a good shooter who was expected to be picked pretty high in this draft with a good offensive input, but with the Bullets building Rulin as their top center, building the team around him, Turpin was a highly talented center who was a second-team consensus All-American and became the big star in Kentucky when Sam Bowie was hurt, and had a tremendous blocking ability when it was a really good shooter to boot. But I guess this is all part of a bigger picture if they already have the center they want. And that same day, Turpin was actually part of a 3-way trade involving Cleveland and Seattle, where Turpin was sent to the lowly Cleveland Cavaliers, who definitely needed a center to build around. The Bullets acquired Cliff Robinson from the Cavs, a really good rebounder, and from the Sonics, they acquired Gus Williams, a 2-time All-Star guard who can rack up some points and has a ton of playoff experience and has the championship ring as part of the Sonics. The Sonics get Ricky Sobers from the Washington Bullets, who had been their top point guard for the last 2 seasons, and has done pretty good. Robinson and Williams put up some pretty good numbers while in Washington, but each only lasted 2 seasons. Sobers didn't make much of an impact in Seattle and only lasted for 2 years, and this trade is more to it, but I'm going to get to that a little later. As for Turpin, well, he seemed to be off to a pretty good start in Cleveland with the Cavaliers team that was, somewhat growing and put up some okay numbers his first 2 seasons. But his third season showed a decline, and Brad Daugherty was, poised to become the team's top center. Turpin then spent 1 year in Utah as a bench player, then played a year in Spain, came back, and oddly enough, his last pro season was with the Washington Bullets, playing 59 games in 89-90. Sadly, however, on July 8, 2010, Turpin had taken his own life at the age of 49. The first round was now a quarter of a way finished, and while the elite of this class has been selected for the most part anyway, there were still some big picks to come, as next up were the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs were a gigantic disappointment in 1983-84 with a 37-45 record, missing the playoffs after winning 53 games the year prior. And since entering the NBA in 1976, they made the playoffs every year until this past season. They also had one of the best players in the game, George the Iceman Gervin, a future Hall of Famer, who at this point had 8 straight All-Star selections, was a 4-time scoring champion, and in his early 30s was still among the best in the league. The Spurs were having problems, however, with their coaching issues, but hired former Coach of the Year Cotton Fitzsimmons after he spent 6 seasons in Kansas City. General Manager Bob Bass, however, has failed to put together an effective team as a general manager in this time to win anything further than a couple playoff series. As the Spurs actually had, they had the second best offense in the league thanks to Gervin, and had the second worst defense. Oddly enough, another team with a similar problem were the Denver Nuggets, who were first in offense and worst in defense. So yes, the Spurs needed defense, plain and simple. So it was actually a no-brainer for them. They took perhaps the best defensive player in the draft, Alvin Robertson of the University of Arkansas Razorbacks. Voted a second-team All-American from the United Press International, a third-team All-American from the Associated Press, the Sultan of the Steel. Robertson's ability to guard the toughest opposition was uncanny, and also had an offensive upside to him as well, as he averaged 15.5 points a game in his final year with Arkansas. He's also averaging nearly 3 steals a game, causing 4 turnovers a game. He was definitely what the Spurs needed. That summer, he joined Michael Jordan and Sam Perkins and won a gold medal in the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. His rookie year, however, was a bit of a disappointment, but his sophomore campaign, well, that was another story. He took home the NBA's Most Improved Player award the first year it was handed out. It was his first of 3 consecutive All-Star Game selections while in San Antonio. He led the league in steals in what would be the first of back-to-back seasons. He was all-defensive second team for the first time of what would be 3 times in San Antonio. He was also named the All-NBA second All-Star team in general, and that all sounds great, but what was even better is he won Defensive Player of the Year. Talk about an epic sophomore season. The next year, he'd be named to the All-Defensive First Team for the first time. Robertson spent 5 years in San Antonio, as there was a big problem as the team didn't get any better. They were actually quite awful. Their offense, which was their biggest weapon, became quite crappy because they thought Gervin would probably play till he was 100. Anyway, he left San Antonio but go on to spend 4 seasons with the Milwaukee Bucks, where his success continued. He was a second-team All-Defense in his first season there in 89-90, bringing his second-team total to 4. But the very next year, he was the first-team All-Defensive for a second time, bringing overall selections to 6 in his career. And he played in his 4th and final All-Star game as well. The Bucks were a prominent contender but couldn't get it done in the playoffs. The team crumbled, and so did Robertson's production over the next 2 seasons. And during his 4th season in Milwaukee, he was traded to Detroit and didn't make much of a dent. Injuries caused Robertson to miss 2 full seasons of basketball, and many deemed him as retired. But he actually came out of retirement to join the expansion Toronto Raptors in 1995-96. And in their very first game on November 3rd, 1995, at home against the New Jersey Nets, Robertson dished a 3-pointer to give the Raps a 3-0 lead, giving the team their first points in franchise history, and they went on to win the game 94-79. Robertson played 77 games and actually had a pretty good season with the Raptors, which would be his last. Since retirement, however, Robertson has had many run-ins with the law, mainly including domestic violence issues, and was actually accused of a terrible human trafficking charge, but the accusations were later revealed to be false. Some say, however, his terrible off-court issues have kept him at a consideration for the Hall of Fame. However, many point to how short his career was and lack of playoff success. Either way, Robertson still had a superb career, and for at least a 6-year period was one of the best defensive players in the game, so let the debate continue to rage on. Hall of Famer or not, Robertson's career certainly enhances the greatness in this draft that this class possesses already, as now we hit pick number 8, which belongs to the NBA's perennial punchline for many years to come, the Los Angeles Clippers, who up until this season's end were in San Diego. This is their first of 2 picks, and this one became via a trade with the Golden State Warriors back in 1980. Hey, they're coming off an awful 30-52 season. This team has not made the playoffs since they arrived in California. The last time they made it was when the team was still in Buffalo, and they were the Braves back in 1976. 5 coaching changes later, they're trying to stick with Jim Lehman as 30 wins for this team. Might as well be a goddamn playoff berth. The team was also between general manager, so owner Donald Sterling was overseeing operations in the meantime. They did make a good move, however, bringing in 2 stars from the Bucks. While that trade would come a little later on, but be that as it may, going into the next season, they'd have Junior Bridgman and 4-time All-Star Marquez Johnson at small forward. They also had Bill Walton coming off a healthy season, and by that I mean he played more than 40 games. He actually played 55. The Clippers had a good offense, however, and when Walton was healthy, he was still very productive, but his health was always a cause for concern and an issue, as he was only averaging just over 26 minutes a game. So should the Clippers go for a center? Also, they had the 3rd worst defense in the league. With Robertson already taken, the Clippers would likely be looking at a guard still. With guards, you still have some biggies available. You have second-team All-American Leon Wood. You had Jay Humphries, a former high school phenom who smashed records at the University of Colorado. Georgia Bulldog star Vern Fleming, though the options were there. Oh, and this kid named John Stockton, an expert passer out of Gonzaga, who was getting largely overlooked, and just because the school is pretty mediocre and he wasn't making a lot of newspaper headlines. But he had caught a buzz in the media in recent months towards the beginning of this draft. The Clippers, with their 8th overall pick, however, do indeed go with a guard. Lancaster Gordon of the University of Louisville Cardinals. This one confused a few people. Gordon wasn't originally touted as being this high in the draft, although it was expected he'd go first round. And while he was a talented scoring guard with good defensive abilities, a player like him would be in danger of drowning with the Clippers franchise. And he did. He played 4 seasons for the Clippers from the bench before playing a few seasons in the minor league CBA before leaving the game of basketball in 1991. Hopefully the Clippers' next pick will pan out better. Well, as the wise Billy Bob Thornton once said in the hit film Bad Santa, they can't all be winners, kid. And speaking of that, we move on to the 9th pick of the draft, the Kansas City Kings. Despite their feeble 38-44 record, they did slip into the playoffs, but were swept out, of course, by eventual Western Conference champions, the Lakers. The Kings were one of the oldest teams in basketball. Their origins date back to the 1920s, and being the Rochester Royals won the NBA championship in 1951. That would be their last title win. After 15 years in Cincinnati, however, the team moved to Kansas City in 1972. After false hope in the 70s and a couple good seasons in the early 80s, the team bid farewell to Cotton Fitzsimmons and hired new head coach Jack McKinney, who had success as an assistant in Portland in the 1970s and won Coach of the Year with the Pacers in 1981. Joe Axelson was the team's GM from 1969 to 79, returned in 1982, and he did make a great deal during the last season, attaining Reggie Theus from the Bulls, a 2-time All-Star. And they also have 4-time all-defensive first-team star point guard Don Buse as well. And so Axelson was trying hard to put the pieces together. The problem was his team was just, the very definition of middle of the road when it came to both offense and defense. They could use a good power forward and more size up front, and they had a good center in LaSalle Thompson, but still centers were worth looking at. And also more depth on defense, especially in the rebound department. So they went with someone who in college was the complete package. With the 9th pick, the Kings go with Otis Thorpe of Providence College, the Friars, a power forward who can also work well at center with major size factor both in height and in weight, a great rebounder who can rack up points as well. As a matter of fact, some felt he was a much more well-rounded and a dynamic player than Barkley in his college days. Coming off a huge year where he was the first team All-Big East, had 17.1 points per game and 10.3 rebounds. He was great at field goal percentage as well, although not quite as good as Barkley. Since his freshman year, he'd been making waves in Providence, pretty much getting double-doubles almost nightly, it seemed. Being named to the All-Freshman team in 81, the 3rd team All-Big East in 82 and 83, and as a sophomore and junior respectively. As his game grew, he was always trying to make himself better. This was actually a really good pick for the Kings. His first couple seasons weren't bad, but nothing really to write home about. He really broke out in his 3rd and 4th season with the Kings, who actually at this point were now in Sacramento. He became an immensely popular player there and racked up some really good numbers, racking up double-doubles even constantly. However, a 1988 trade sent him to Houston, where he'd actually enjoyed the greatest success of his career for 7 seasons as their starting power forward. In addition to still racking up some really good numbers, he made his first only NBA All-Star Game appearance in 1992, and then 2 years later was a key component in the Houston Rockets NBA championship win, along with the first overall pick Hakeem Olajuwon, and got himself a championship ring. He was a bit of an Iron Man in the NBA. He just missed 17 games in 10 seasons at that point, but he wasn't around to repeat the following year, as near the midway point of the 94-95 season, the Rockets, the defending champs, were struggling and traded Thorpe to Portland for superstar Clyde Drexler. After that, Thorpe became a bit of a journeyman. He finished the 1994-95 season in Portland, and he had a 2-season stint in Detroit. He split a season between the Vancouver Grizzlies and then returned to Sacramento, neither of which really panned out. He then spent a season with the Washington Wizards, and at this point, he was still starting actually several games, and then spent his final 2 seasons in a mentor-type role as a bench player with the Miami Heat, and then the Charlotte Hornets before retiring in 2001 after 17 NBA seasons and nearly 1,250 games played. Thorpe, in a similar vein to Sam Perkins, had a great career, even if it wasn't a Hall of Fame caliber one. He did have an All-Star selection, and a nice little piece of jewelry being a champion. He was also one of the most popular players in the Houston Rockets history, and several years ago there was actually an online petition for the Rockets to retire his number, which also drew support from some of his former teammates. Yeah, the Kings, they went nowhere, and they're still pretty much there, outside of some false hope in the early 2000s. And next up, we have the Philadelphia 76ers, their second of 3 picks in this opening round. And really, they just need to build for their future, with the Wind drafting Barkley, obviously. And this pick was courtesy of a 1978 trade with the Denver Nuggets, and they select Leon Wood, a point guard from Cal State Fullerton Titans, a 1984 consensus second-team All-American who, some were surprised, was drafted this low. He had a great offensive dominance and was also a great passer. He was, named the first-team Pacific Coast Athletic Association 3 years in a row, and was also part of that Pan Am Games gold medal team in 1983, and had an incredible year in his final year, 24 points a game, and had assumed more of a shooting guard role, but still averaged more than 6 assists a game, and he was a great free throw shooter, and he could definitely fit a great mold in Philly, starting as a bench player and evolving as perhaps Cheese and Tony get a little older. Leon Wood was part of the 1984 gold medal Olympic team of USA, but his career in the NBA didn't pan out overly well. He only played 67 games over parts of 2 seasons with the Sixers, and during his second season was traded to the Bullets, where he'd played 39 games. He played a full season in New Jersey for the Nets, then split a season between the Spurs and Hawks. He left the NBA and then made his way to Spain in 1988, and returned stateside after a season there, but played in the CBA, Continental Basketball Association, for the Santa Barbara Islanders, and was all second-team CBA. And that same year, he had a 28-game return to New Jersey. He also filed an antitrust lawsuit against the NBA around this time, but would lose, which is likely why he only played 12 more NBA games, that being with the Kings in 1990-91. He then bounced around basketball leagues, 3 more seasons spread out in the CBA, stints in Italy, Germany, France, and even the Philippines, where he fared pretty well before retiring from pro ball in 1994. But come 1996, he found his true calling as an NBA referee, a position he still holds to this day. While his career wasn't exactly setting the world on fire, he's still contributing to the game. Oh, so there's the top 10, and we still have lots to go. And hey, more potential stars to be waiting on their chance. And next up is the Atlanta Hawks. General Manager Stan Kasten has been trying his damnedest to build a formidable team as they snuck into the playoffs with a 40-42 record and had some false hope in the late 70s into the early 80s. And again, one of the oldest franchises in NBA history, haven't won a championship since 1958 when they were still in St. Louis. They had one of the best defenses in the league, second best as a matter of fact, thanks to a system that Mike Fratello implemented, led by powerhouse center Tree Rollins, who lives up to his name, coming off an all-defensive first-team year. And they had the worst offense in the league, however, despite an exciting rising star named Dominique Wilkins, who was already making highlight reels, still perfecting his game. So, what they definitely need is offense, and a lot of it. Still available, you have Olympian Jeff Turner from Vanderbilt. There was also Michael Cage of San Diego State, who was a great rebounder and put up some great offensive numbers. And Hawks, however, pass up those two, and they would actually make a really good pick. Kevin Willis of the Michigan State Wolverines, 7 feet tall, over 240 pounds, had a good defensive upside to him, but as good as he was, some kind of balked this pick because he didn't really rack up big numbers like Cage or even Turner, and didn't win any really major personal accomplishments. The Wolverines, however, were not a very good team when Willis joined them, and they weren't even considered a threat until his final year there, and they still weren't that big a threat. Either way, Atlanta saw something in this kid and felt he would fit in perfect for the team going forward. And he became one of the most popular players in this team's history and was among the league's best rebounders for a time as well. He played 10 seasons in Atlanta and also had much adversity to overcome, as he missed the entire 1989 season with a knee injury, but returned, persevered, and remained one of their best players to the point where he was 1992 he was named an NBA All-Star. But he was also named to the 3rd All-Star team at the end of the season. The playoff time was never kind to the Hawks. They couldn't get past the second round, and all hope seemed lost. But in 1993-94, they were the best team in the Eastern Conference thanks to new head coach Lenny Wilkins. However, Dominique Wilkins, who at this point was one of the biggest stars in the league, his contract was about to expire, so they traded him in a terrible deal to the Clippers. I mean, okay, they did get All-Star Danny Manning in return, but it panned out terribly for the Hawks, who suffered another second-round exit. This apparently was the Hawks' way of tearing down and starting again, and Willis was next on the chopping block, just playing 2 games for the Hawks the following season, and was traded to Miami Heat, and then he became an NBA journeyman. As for the Hawks, they crumbled soon after and still haven't won an NBA title as of 2022. Well, he'd spent parts of 2 seasons with the Heat, playing 112 games, and then 28 games with the Warriors for about half of a season. Then he spent 2 seasons in Houston, where he seemed to start regaining his form again. He then spent parts of 3 seasons with the Raptors as a 6-man, played half a season in Denver in the same role. After return to Houston for a season, he took the 3-hour drive to San Antonio, where he was a key bench player, and obtained his first and only NBA championship ring there in 02-03, his 18th season. He played another year there, and he refused to quit, including playing 29 games in an emotional return to Atlanta, where he received a standing ovation in his first home game back in 04-05. Late in 2006-07, at 45 years old, he was still determined to play after sitting out 05-06, and indeed he made it to the Dallas Mavericks roster late in the season, played 5 games before retiring for good after playing in a total of 21 NBA season, 1,424 NBA games. As of this video, ranks 9th all-time, but will likely be passed by LeBron James very soon. Some fans in Atlanta believe his number should be retired. And now we approach the halfway point of the first round. It's been amazing so far, and we can only hope it continues as we approach, oh boy, the lowest of the low, the cream of the crap. A team that causes somebody to throw back their heads and laugh hysterically at them, much like other sports teams in their town, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Okay, to be fair, the Browns weren't bad around this time. This is a compensation pick, however, and yes, the Cavs, who entered the league in 1970, gave the fans false hope at best a few times, and never amounted to anything more than just simply being a playoff team in the 1970s, and they had not made the playoffs since 1978. They have a new head coach by the name of George Karl, who for the last 3 seasons has coached the Montana Golden Nuggets of the CBA, and has won 2 conference titles as a result, but he's 33 years old and a lot younger than most coaches, but perhaps he's what the Cavs need. God knows general manager Harry Weltman has yet to figure it out. They do have a couple All-Stars, however. Shooting guard Will B. Free and All-Star power forward Lonnie Shelton. But like any team in the Cavs position, they need a center to build the team around. The Cavs defense was pretty solid for the most part, but they had one of the worst offenses in the league in the bottom 5. And their field goal shooting was abysmal. Well, I know what you're thinking. Since earlier in the draft, they acquired 6th pick Melvin Turpin at center, so they should look at shooters, I guess, right? Well, Vern Fleming out of Georgia has a good shot, but Fresno State's Bernard Thompson's yearly average is over 500, nearing 600, and could be a difference maker. The options are definitely there. However, the Cavs select center out of Michigan State, Tim McCormick. You're thinking, wait, they have Turpin. Well, I was waiting for this pick to happen to reveal the rest of that trade that was mentioned earlier. And indeed, McCormick was also part of that 3-way trade between Washington, Seattle, and Cleveland. He is now a Seattle Supersonic. McCormick was previous pick Kevin Willis' teammate in Michigan State. At 6'11" and 240 pounds, he was a very effective center who was not afraid to drive to the basket. But much like Willis, he began his career at Michigan State when they were a fledgling club and didn't obtain many personal accomplishments. But he was pretty good from the field and had a presence about him on the court. He could be what a sluggish Sonics team needs. And sadly, it wasn't the case. McCormick played 8 NBA seasons, and he did play 2 full seasons in Seattle, then moved to the 76ers, and his only full season there was their starting center after the departure of Moses Malone. But during his 2nd season with the club, he was sent to New Jersey for a 47-game stint, where he became their starter. He was a bench player at Houston for 99 games over the course of 2 seasons, spent a season with the Hawks for 56 games, and with former Wolverine teammate Kevin Willis, and ended his career after a 1991-92 stint of 22 games with the New York Knicks. McCormick, however, has still gone on to do great things as a basketball analyst for ESPN and NBCSN. And he's heading up the NBA Players Association's Top 100 basketball camp for the best high school players in America. However, the big trade didn't really work out for any of these 3 teams like they'd hoped. Is it any wonder Cleveland didn't win a championship since this draft until it was 32 years later? At least they won one. Well, we've hit the halfway point of the first round, and so far we have 3 Hall of Famers, 4 other players who want to have really good careers, and 5 that may not have panned out, but one of them became one of the league's top referees. Combined so far, we also have 10 NBA championship rings, 8 Finals MVPs, 7 League MVPs, 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and 43 All-Star Game selections. 7 Olympic gold medals. So now we move on to lucky number 13, and that goes to the Phoenix Suns. The Suns were a middle-of-the-road team, it seemed, with some talent, and had a decent 41-41 season, but shocked many, making it all the way to the Western Conference Final and taking the Los Angeles Lakers to 6 games. Since their inception, however, Jerry Colangelo has been steering this ship, and John McLeod was entering his 12th season as head coach, and he indeed has an NBA Finals appearance under his belt and hasn't missed the playoffs since 1977. But championship success eludes them, and their playoff run, however, gave some people some hope. Larry Nance is a very exciting player, even won the NBA's first slam dunk competition. They also had, at that point, a 5-time All-Star shooting guard and an icon in the desert, Walter Davis. But in order to keep their momentum going, they needed to add depth to their defense, especially a good defensive rebounder, which was one of their weak points. So the Suns' 13th pick goes to Jay Humphries, a shooting guard at Colorado State. Even though Davis is still good, he is getting older, and Humphries could be a guy they can build to take and emerge as the next star in that position. Colorado State Humphries was consistent, as he did have a defensive upside who was great at making steals, so he could add that defensive depth as time goes on. And in his final year, he was averaging 3 steals a game and over 15 points. Humphries actually played 11 seasons in the NBA and was a good utility player, and racked up some decent numbers during his 4 seasons in Phoenix, but the team was continuing to make changes to build a contender into the late 80s, and Humphries was sent to the Bucks, and played 5 seasons there, the majority of which as a starter. For parts of 3 seasons, he was a 6th man in Utah, and ended his career with a 6-game stint in Boston. Well, with the 14th pick and their 2nd pick of the round, the Los Angeles Clippers, and we already know, well, Lancaster Gordon didn't pan out very well, but let's see if they can make this one count. So they go with the pick that they obtained in the 1983 deal with Seattle, and they're the ones who pick Michael Cage from San Diego State. And on paper, this was a fantastic pick for the Clippers. A 2-time Western Athletic Conference Player of the Year, 2-time first-team All-WAC, and a gold medal from the 1983 Pan Am Games. In his senior season, he averaged a huge 24.5 points per game, and was a tremendous rebounder. At the power forward position, he could be someone that could potentially become a franchise player. Cage seemed to be developing his game quite well in his first couple seasons, and by his 4th season with the Clippers, he led the entire league in rebounds in 87-88. But his Clippers team wrote a whole new book when it comes to failure, so much so that for many years they'd likely raise a banner if they even won 40 games in a given season. And Cage was off to the Sonics, where he became a big part of their growth over the course of the next 6 seasons, and while he remained a great rebounder, his career didn't pan out like many had thought. But after leaving Seattle, he spent 2 full seasons in Cleveland, spent 1 season with the Sixers, and finished his career in New Jersey with 1 full season retiring in 1998-99, but came into retirement playing 20 games for the Nets in 1999-2000, playing 15 total seasons, and 1,140 total games. Yeah, the Clippers were something in this era, weren't they? But now it's the Dallas Mavericks with their 2nd pick of the first round, and Sam Perkins panned out pretty good for them, so let's see if they can make it 2 for 2. And they chose shooting guard Terrence Stansbury from the Temple Owls, a 3rd-team All-American selected by the National Association of Basketball Coaches, and was also the Atlantic 10 Player of the Year, and also won the Robert V. Gisu Trophy in 1983 as the most outstanding collegiate player among the Philly Big Five, and was a natural scorer, averaging 18.6 points a game in his senior year. However, not long before the season was set to begin, Stansbury was traded to the Indiana Pacers. Stansbury was a regular fixture at the NBA dunk competitions during All-Star weekends, and despite never winning, often stole the show. After 2 seasons in Indiana, he spent his 3rd with the Sonics before leaving the NBA for good. He spent a year in the Netherlands and played 6 seasons in Belgium, where he won the French 2nd Division Foreign Players MVP in 1992 and was their top scorer in 1993. He made stops in France, Israel, Greece, and has had a great coaching career overseas as well, after retiring of 19 seasons of pro ball. Okay, well, Stansbury wasn't an NBA success story. His short, yet brief time in the league is remembered due to his dunk competition prowess, and still had a successful pro career overseas. But next up is the Utah Jazz. Frank Layden, since taking over as general manager in 1979, has been focused heavily on building a big winner, and had one of the best offensive powerhouses in the entire NBA in Adrian Dantley, who rebounded after an injury-plagued season, was the NBA's leading scorer in 1983-84, and a 4-time All-Star at this point. They had built the team around center Mark Eaton, a tremendous center who led the league in blocks. They also had an All-Star point guard and veteran Ricky Green, who led the league in steals. But despite the 45-win season, the playoffs didn't pan out, and despite having a pretty complete team, they could use a little more depth on the defensive side of things. So that's why they went with someone who has been slept on in the entire draft. Point guard John Stockton from Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington. West Coast Conference Player of the Year, 2-time All-WCC back-to-back. But due to Gonzaga not being an elite club at this point, Stockton was heavily overlooked. As a matter of fact, what was misinterpreted as boos by some spectators at the draft as well as the draft headquarters from fans in Utah was actually people collectively saying, "Who?" Stockton's stock rose towards the end of the college season and started generating a little bit of a buzz, and the Jazz obviously noticed this. A precise passer and great setup man who was great at beginning a rush. He was also amazing at stealing the ball, was averaging nearly 4 a game and could rack up some points, averaging over 20 a game, and he was a complete package. They do have Ricky Green, but as he hits his 30s, Stockton can be molded into their next star point guard. And that's exactly what happened. After 3 seasons of being a great sixth man, he became the team's starting point guard by his 4th season. And another star player, some guy named Karl Malone, was also becoming a big star in Utah around this point. And it was onward and upward, and he became one of the best point guards, arguably maybe even the best in NBA history. A 10-time All-Star, including 9 in a row from 1989 and 97, and 1 more in 2000, at the age of 38 no less. And in 1993, shared the All-Star Game MVP with teammate Karl Malone. 2-time NBA First-Team All-Star, 6-time Second-Team All-Star, and a 3-time Third-Team All-Star. That's a total of 11 Team All-Star selections. Remarkable. He led the league in assists 9 seasons in a row from 1988 to 1996 and led the league in steals twice. He was also a 5-time All-Defensive Second-Team selection. But then his biggest accomplishment came on February 1st, 1995. He became the NBA's all-time assist leader, passing Magic Johnson with his 9,222nd assist, setting up, who else? Karl Malone for a shot. And it happened at home, and adoring fans gave their hero a wonderful standing ovation. He's still the NBA's all-time leader with a huge 15,806 total assists. Chris Paul is the closest active leader to him with just over 10,000. And this all happened in 19 seasons, all spent with the Utah Jazz. Sadly, however, the only thing Stockton was unable to accomplish was a championship ring. The Jazz made some very deep playoff runs and made it to back-to-back NBA Finals in 97 and 98, but some guy named Michael Jordan had other plans. Stockton did win 2 Olympic gold medals as part of the Dream Teams 1 and 2, and he was also named to the 50th and 75th anniversary teams. His jersey was retired by the Utah Jazz, and he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. So now this draft class has 4 Hall of Famers in the first round. The Utah Jazz may not have won a championship, but Stockton, along with Karl Malone for many years, gave Utah fans a lot to cheer about. But now it was the New Jersey Nets' turn to make their pick. The Nets were another team that seemed to be gaining traction, and with general manager Louis Schaeffel and head coach Stan Albeck both being hired this past season, they wanted to take the Nets from a middle-of-the-road club to a championship contender, and a 45-win season certainly wasn't a bad place to start. And their fortunes were built around former star center of the Sixers, Darryl Dawkins, but also Otis Birdsong, an all-star for the Kings, for the last 3 seasons has been key in the rise of the Nets, as has youngster Buck Williams, already a 2-time all-star in his own right. Michael Ray Richardson was one of the best point guards in the league, but had an injury-plagued season, but was productive when he was healthy, and could be a huge key for the Nets going forward. However, they need more consistency on both sides of the ball, as they are ranked near the middle in both offense and defense. And with the 17th pick, the Nets take power forward Jeff Turner of the Vanderbilt Commodores. And a solid dynamic forward who was a big star at Vanderbilt, but the team as a whole wasn't thriving much. But Turner was loved in the area and showed a lot of skill, great from the free-throw line, and also provides a tremendous size factor. Turner was another member of the first round of this draft, who was part of the 1984 U.S. Olympic gold medal team. But his career in the NBA was kind of going a different route. He spent 3 seasons in New Jersey, primarily as a bench player, went to Italy for 2 years. He returned to the NBA in the 89-90 season as a member of the expansion Orlando Magic, where he would actually be key in the team building a strong bench, spending 7 seasons with them and becoming a fan favorite, and even got to play in the NBA Finals in 1995. However, the Magic were swept by Hakeem and the Rockets. Turner retired in 1996 after 12 years of pro ball. Well, now we're about to end the third quarter of this draft, so to speak, as we hit number 18. Via September 1983 trade with the New York Knicks, next up we have a team who has become nothing short of perennial basement dwellers, the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers were, again, yes, among one of the worst teams in the league. Longtime assistant coach George Irvine has taken over as head coach. General manager Robert Salyers is trying hard to build a formidable team. Last year, second overall pick Steve Stepanovich made the all-rookie team, and it's the type of center you can really build around. And also they had power forward Clark Kellogg, who was emerging as a talent from the 82-83 all-rookie team. The Pacers had a pretty good defense, but needed to build their offense input significantly, and they do lack depth at the point guard position. So who is available? Well, one of the best available by far is Vern Fleming of Georgia. So the Pacers indeed chose him. First team All-Star Southeastern Conference, third team All-American named by the NABC, and he's a very highly proficient offensive point guard, averaging nearly 20 points a game with great speed in the paint. The Pacers have a young, maturing team, and talent like Fleming is a good way to build them up. Also, Fleming was a part of that gold medal team in 1984 and went on to play 11 seasons for the Pacers and was starter for the first 7. And by the mid-90s, the Pacers were championship contenders after years of uncertainty, and Fleming was a big part of that, and was also a great team leader to boot. He played one season as a sixth man in New Jersey, however, before leaving the NBA, playing a year in France, and retiring from basketball in 1997. Well, this draft is three-quarters gone, and if they're not Hall of Famers, most of them are pretty significant parts of their team. And hey, we've entered the upper tier of the league now, and the Portland Trailblazers already make their second pick of the first round, and they select forward Bernard Thompson out of Fresno State, a fantastic shooter, and was first-team All-PCAA twice in a row in 83 and 84, and even back in 82 for his sophomore season, made the second team, and could very well be formidable for this powerful Blazers team. However, that wasn't the case. Thompson's NBA career did not pan out. His rookie year, he didn't see much action, and he was sent to Phoenix, where he played 122 games over the course of 3 seasons there, and his game never really evolved beyond a utility bench player. In his 5th NBA season, he played 23 games with the Rockets before leaving the NBA for good. After spending a couple seasons in the CBA, as well as the Premier Basketball League, he ventured to Europe, playing in Israel, as well as other parts overseas, the Philippines, Germany, and Chile. And in 1995 was the German League's top scorer. He retired after 17 seasons of pro basketball in 2001. Well, the Blazers' first-round picks didn't pan out all that much, but they still had a pretty good future ahead, as now we move to the best rising clubs in the league, with the 20th pick in the draft, the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are one of the oldest franchises in basketball themselves, and in the NBA themselves since 1948. But they had yet to win an NBA title and hadn't won a division title since 1956. Their fortunes changed, however, when Jack McCloskey took over as GM in 1979 and began a plan, while coach Chuck Daly kept his team focused and built what would become one of the grittiest teams in the history of the game. Their 49-33 record showed how the things were coming together under Daly's first year as head coach, as it was their first winning record since 76-77, as they were on the road to erasing a history of mediocrity. The building truly started with Isaiah Thomas, their star point guard, who in 3 seasons is a 3-time All-Star. Also, center Bill Laimbeer is one of the best and dirtiest players in the league in terms of rebounding, and has also racked up some great stats, and he also has been key in the Pistons' rise. They also have added 3-time All-Star power forward Dan Roundfield from the Atlanta Hawks to their team. They need defensive depth and a good small forward, and available? Kenny Fields, a 3-time first-team Pac-10 All-Star, Michael Young, who was Hakeem's teammate in Houston. And they do make a good pick, choosing Tony Campbell out of Ohio State, a small forward, a tremendous shooter added to a team who did have one of the lower field goal percentages in the league, so once again McCloskey played this one very smartly. However, he would only play 178 games as a Piston over the course of 3 seasons as a bench player, as the Pistons would acquire Adrian Dantley in 1986, and he'd become the team's small forward, and they would also acquire Mark Aguirre later on, who would help them win 2 NBA championships. However, during his 3rd season in Detroit, he spent time in the CBA and was later sent to the LA Lakers, and in the same year, played for the CBA Albany Patroons and won their league championship as well as their newcomer of the year, and then he won an NBA championship as a bench player for the Lakers, beating the Pistons. Well, he spent one more season with the Lakers, being on the receiving end of a beating from the Pistons, and he joined the expansion Minnesota Timberwolves in 1989. He actually became one of their first star players, and for the first time in his career was a starter. He played 3 seasons there, and then a season and a half for the Knicks, and then half a season with the Mavericks, the full season in Cleveland before leaving the NBA in 1995. After a brief stint in Greece, he played his final season of basketball in the CBA, retiring in 1997. Not a bad career at all, really. So, as we are now nearing the top of the league, the very end of the first round is approaching as well, as these top-tier teams are gearing up for their future. Some of whom are hoping to take the next step of being champion, and others are hoping to stay that way. Next up is one of the best teams in the league still trying to find their way back to the top, the Milwaukee Bucks. Don Nelson has been steering this ship for a while now as both coach and GM, but the Bucks just can't seem to hit that next level. As a matter of fact, since the 1978-79 season, they haven't won less than 49 games. They're a perennial 50-plus win team, but the Celtics or Sixers seem to be the beast of the East. They were also months away from trading all-star forward Marquez Johnson as well as Junior Bridgeman in exchange for power forward Terry Cummings. They had the best defensive player in the game at the time, point guard Sidney Moncrief, who's coming off winning his second consecutive Defensive Player of the Year award. The Bucks, as a matter of fact, had one of the best defenses in the entire league. And despite their 50-32 season, however, they couldn't keep up with the Celtics despite making it to the conference final. With the trade still a few months away, however, they still needs to put someone to put some points on the board, as their offense was ranked fairly low for a top-tier team. So, with the 21st pick, the Bucks select small forward Kenny Fields from UCLA, the Pac-10 Player of the Year in 1983, and was also a three-time first-team All-Pac-10 and was third-team All-American named by the Associated Press. Good from the field, great at making difficult baskets, and an excellent rebounder. However, his NBA career did not pan out. He spent 2 full seasons and part of a third as a bench player in Milwaukee as Paul Pressey was the team's starting small forward. He was sent to the Clippers where he'd only played 51 games over 2 seasons. He split time for the next couple of years in the CBA and USBL and left the game in 1990. He even came out of retirement, oddly enough, in 1990 and spent a year in Portugal before retiring for good in 2000. Well, it didn't work out for the Bucks, who wouldn't win another championship for 37 years after this. But next up, with their third pick of the first round, the Philadelphia 76ers, well, we know Barkley panned out very well for them, and Leon Wood didn't exactly. So they select Tom Sewell, a shooting guard from Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas. He was named Southland Conference Player of the Year, and then was a 2-time first-team All-Southland Conference as well. A great scorer with 22.9 points per game with a great .539 field goal percentage as well, and has the potential to be an offensive powerhouse. Sewell, however, never played a single game for the Sixers, as that same day he was traded to the Washington Bullets for a first-round draft pick in 1988. Sewell only played 21 NBA games in his only season in Washington. Looking at this draft, is it any wonder Washington doesn't come close to a championship? He split time between the CBA as well as stints in Netherlands and Greece before retiring from basketball in 1993. Yeah, this deal didn't work out for Philadelphia either, and they still have yet to win a championship as of 2022. And as now we get to the finals, literally, as the only 2 teams remaining had just played in one of the most storied NBA finals of all time. And we go to the Western Conference champion, LA Lakers. Well, the Lakers in the last 5 seasons have won the Western Conference all but once, and have 2 titles to their credit in that time. Do I really need to elaborate? It's the Lakers, it's the 1980s. Kareem, check. Magic, check. Worthy, check. Wilkes, check. All Hall of Famers. Not to mention you have Kurt Rambis, as well as Bob McAdoo, who's another Hall of Famer, by the way, on their bench, and a great 6th man. They were coached by Pat Riley, run by Jerry West. All this team needs is to build for their future, perhaps add some more depth to their bench. You never know what might happen. And they take center Earl Jones from the University of D.C., part of the NCAA Division II championship team in 1982, and a 2-time Division II Player of the Year from the NABC. Perhaps being drafted as a potential successor for Kareem, right? Well, actually, no. He played 2 games for the Lakers and was waived during his rookie season after encountering foot injuries. He had a brief 12-game stint with the Bucks in his second season, and that was pretty much the extent of his NBA career. He had stints of pro ball in Italy, France, and Spain before leaving the game and coming out of retirement for a bit in the mid-90s for a brief stint in the CBA, finishing with basketball as a whole in 1995. Well, this didn't really hurt the Lakers. After all, for the next 5 seasons, they would appear in 4 championships, winning 3. And after coming out short in the 90s, since the year 2000, they've won 6. So yeah, I'd say they've done pretty okay for themselves. And we have finally come down to it. The last pick of the first round, it goes to the NBA champion, Boston Celtics. The Celtics, despite being the champs, have a new GM in Jan Volk, who steps into the role after the iconic Red Auerbach steps away from the role in the position after nearly 35 years, and arguably, I don't think there's an arguable point about it, probably the greatest general manager of all time. And K.C. Jones, after 5 seasons as an assistant, and as a matter of fact, won a championship in his first year as coach, is now heading the bench in Boston. And do I really have to explain it? It's the 1980s. It's the Boston Celtics. They have won the East 3 times in 5 years and have 2 championships to show for it. Okay, so Bird, check. Parrish, check. McHale, check. Dennis Johnson, check. All those guys, Hall of Famers, and yes, Danny Ainge and Quinn Buckner on top of that. And like the Lakers, they just, again, need to build for their future, perhaps have something just in case on the bench. And they select forward Michael Young out of the University of Houston Cougars. He was named third-team All-American from United Press International, as well as the Associated Press and the NABC. He is averaging nearly 20 points a game and a pretty good rebounder to boot. Young, however, couldn't make the team. The Celtics were just too damn good. He would play 2 games for the Suns and then play 2 games for the Sixers in his second year, while spending time in the CBA, where he won the MVP award in 1986. He then departed overseas with stints in the Philippines, Spain, and Italy. In 1988 was the All-Star Game MVP in the Spanish League, and returned to the NBA in 1989 to play 45 games for the Clippers. Then after a stint in the CBA and back to Italy, where he was their top scorer in 1991, would play in France, where he won his only major championship in the Euro League, and was a 2-time foreign player MVP. He retired in 1996. Not a bad career, even if barely any of it happened at all in the NBA. And there it is, the greatest first round of the NBA draft in the league's history. 24 picks, 4 Hall of Famers, 3 of them selected in the top 5. Hakeem, MJ, and Barkley being those 3, and then later on, John Stockton. And other than said Hall of Famers, you have a few All-Stars such as Robertson, Thorpe, and Willis. Others, like Sam Perkins and Tony Campbell, went on to have really good NBA careers themselves and became fan favorites. More had great success in Europe, some even in the minor leagues, and we even have a long-tenured referee. Yes, there were some that never panned out in any regard, but that seems to be minimal on this list, as most of these guys had success one way or another. So we have a combined 11 NBA championships, and we know where more than half of those came from. A combined 53 All-Star selections, 23 first-team All-Star selections, 16 second-team All-Star selections, and 7 third-team selections. We have 16 first-team All-Defensive selections, 13 second-team All-Defensive selections, 7 league MVPs, 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and 12 Olympic gold medals. While the first round may be the highlight of the draft in any given sport, it's not the only round. So let's take a look at some of the other notable picks of this draft. While Portland's first-round selections didn't pan out like they'd hoped, one of their second-round selections did. NCAA Division II star Jerome Kersey became very popular in Portland over the course of 11 seasons there, with 2 NBA Finals appearances in 1990 and 92 as their starting small forward. The next 6 seasons saw him play a bench role for 5 teams, getting himself a ring in San Antonio before retiring in 2001. Rick Carlisle was the Celtics pick in the 3rd round and defied many odds by even making the team on the bench and got himself a championship ring in 1986. Speaking of the Celtics, however, they would make one more finals appearance in 1987, losing the rubber match to the Lakers, and would not make a finals appearance for another 20-some years, 2008, when they would actually win their first championship since '86 and haven't won one since. But after Carlisle retired in 1989, he made his mark, becoming one of the best coaches in NBA modern history as he approaches 1,700 games coached as of this video. Since his bench boss career began in 2001, he is noted mostly for the 12 seasons he coached in Dallas, leading them to an NBA championship in 2011. He is currently coaching, as of this video, the Indiana Pacers. Even track and field star Carl Lewis, a 9-time Olympic gold medalist, 8-time world champion gold medalist, and was taken 208th overall by the Chicago Bulls despite never having played high school or college ball. He was simply taken because he was one of the best athletes in the world at the time. The Dallas Cowboys actually took him to the NFL draft just a couple months prior to this. And now, even though the first round had 4 Hall of Famers, this draft had 5. However, the man never played one game of NBA basketball. Oh sure, he had countless offers. He's one of the biggest international stars in the history of the game. Brazilian-born Oscar Schmidt. He was taken in the 6th round, 131st overall by the New Jersey Nets. A career of pro ball that started at the age of 16, spanning 29 years until he was 45. He's practically seen as a god, a true icon in his home country of Brazil. In many people's opinions, the only one more popular than him would be soccer star Pelé. FIBA International Basketball was taken to a whole new level because of this man. Speaking of FIBA, Schmidt has taken home the FIBA Intercontinental Cup, I should say, which was back in 1979. He was also the leading scorer in the tournament. He won a bronze at the FIBA World Cup. Prior to that, in 1978, he also won a bronze at the FIBA Americup in 1989. 3 FIBA South American Championship golds in 77, 83, and 85, and 2 silvers in 79 and 81. In 1991, he was named one of the 50 greatest players in FIBA history and is in the FIBA Hall of Fame. He has had success in many corners of the globe. Of course, his native Brazil, where he was a 3-time Brazilian basketball champion with 2 different clubs in 77, 79, and much later in 1996. He also led the Brazilian championship 10 times in scoring. He also has a South American title to his credit. In the early 80s into the 90s, Schmidt dominated Italy, including winning the Italian Basketball Cup in 1988. And for 10 straight years, from 1983 to 92, he was an Italian League All-Star. He was a top scorer in the Italian League 7 times. His jersey has been retired by 2 clubs, and he was inducted into the Italian Basketball Hall of Fame in 2017. In Spain, he also did very well, a 2-time All-Star and the league's top scorer in 1994. Schmidt is also a recipient of the Olympic Order, as he was key in the international growth of basketball. He represented Brazil in the 1980, 84, 88, 92, and 96 Olympics. In 88, 92, and 96, he led each tournament in scoring and set a record of over 42 points per game in 1988. Sadly, however, he was not able to obtain an Olympic medal. And he has also done well at the Pan American Games with a bronze medal in 1979, but his biggest moment came in 1987. Brazil had made the gold medal game at the Pan Americans in Indianapolis, a basketball town, home of Bobby Knight and the Hoosiers. And they took on Team USA and were down by 14 at the half. And this USA team had the likes of future NBA star and Hall of Famer David Robinson, as well as others such as Danny Manning, Purvis Ellison, Dan Marley, and Keith Smart, and Rex Chapman. Schmidt, however, pulled off a performance of a lifetime. 46 points, and Brazil shocked the Americans and the entire world. A 120-115 win. In the previous 9 Pan Am Games, the U.S. had won 8 gold medals, only losing in 1971. Schmidt's performance made headlines, posing the question, again, how's this guy not in the NBA? Well, as I said, he never played an NBA game, but is without question the biggest international star in many corners of the globe in pro basketball, with over 50,000 career points, and was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2013. Well, that does it for our look at the greatest draft class of all time. But this isn't to say there weren't others that came somewhat close. What year should we cover otherwise? Let us know in the comments if you want to see one. In the meantime, like the video, share, and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, I'll see ya!